Shalom, everyone. Bruchim Habayim and Chodesh Tov. It is the new month as well, so welcome. If you have a cell phone and you are expecting a call from God, you may leave it in the position that it is right now. If you are not expecting a call from God, I ask you to please put it on silent. Wow, it's great to be here together. We're going to, Hanan and I have practiced how to do Kabbalat Shabbat complete and halachic, but with alacrity. To do it quickly so we can have as much time as possible to hear from our scholar in residence. So we will begin in our Sidurs, our Lev Shalem, our red books, we're going to do with, start with Yedid Nefesh, right?
Yes.
Yes, on page 10, Yedid Nefesh.
Yedid Nefesh Avachaman Meshoch Avdach Eretz Onaf Yarotz Avdach Kemo Ayal Yishtachaveh Mol Hadarach Ye'av Lo Yedidotach Minof Etzu V'chol Tam Adonai Ziv HaOlam Nafshi Cholat Ahavatach Ana El Narefana La Beharod La Noam Zivach Az Titchazek V'titrafeh V'hayta Lach Shivchat Olam V'tikehemu Rachamecha V'chutzana Al Ben Ahovach Ki ze kama nichsof nichsaf lirot betiferet ozach ana eli machma libi echoshana ve'ati talam igalena ufos haviv alai etzuka shelomach ta'eret mikvodach nagila v'nismecha bach ma'ahuv kivamoed echaneni ki me'olam.
Page 11.
לכו נרענן על אדוני, נריע לצור אישנו, נקמה פניו ותודתנו.
כי הוא אלוהינו אנחנו אמריתו וצום ידו.
40 שנה כותבתו, ואומרם טועה לבבהם, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי באפי, אם יבואון אל מנוחתי.
Page 13.
שירו לאדוני שיר חדש.
Speak of God's wonders among all people. עוד והדר לפניו עוז ותפארת במקדשו. הסתכלו בהר הקודש, חילו מפניו.
ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו. אז ירננו כל הצייה לפני אדוני כי בו לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק וימים אמונתו.
Page 15.
אדוני מלך תגל הארץ.
The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory. Yaveshu kol of the fesel. L'man mishpatecha Adonai ki Adonai.
אוהבי אדוני סינורה, שומר נפשות חסידיו, מיד רשעים יצילם. עוזרו על הצדיק ולשרי לב שמחה, שמחו צדיקים אדוני והודו לזכר חודשו.
Page 17.
מזמור שיר לאדוני שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה ושיר למזמור קודשו.
זכר חסדו ואמונתו לבית יצחק. הרי לפניו המלך אדוני ירם הים ומלואו.
לפני אדוני כי בא לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק ועמים במישרים. אדוני מלך
Page 19. יושב כרובים תנו את הארץ ורמו אדוני הנה וישתחוו להם למרגליו קדוש הוא.
רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו.
Page 21.
מזמור לדוד, היהבו לאדוני בני אלים, יין אדוני, הבו לאדוני, היי כבוד ועוד, היי הבו לאדוני.
ישב אדוני מלך לעולם.
אדוני עוד לימו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
As we welcome the Sabbath bride is on page 23, 24, and 25.
לך דודי, לך דודי ככלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי ככלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמו וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ונתילה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבל. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך ירבלוך, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
24.
התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגד תפארתך עמי, היד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קרובה אל נפשי נפשי גאלה. לך דודי
דודי,
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי התעוררי, כי באורק קומי אורי, אורי אורי שדברי, כבוד אדוני אלייך ניגע. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקמי, מה תשכוח אחי ומה תמי, אך יחסו עניי עמי, ונבנתה עיר ארצי. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. והיו למשיסו שויוסייך, וירחקו כל מבולייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, עם שרוץ חתן היקר. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. הימין ושמאל תפרוצי, את אדוני תעריצי, היד איש ויין פרצי, ויין נשמחה ונגיד. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמונה עם סגולה. בואי כלה, בואי כלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Shabbos Kodesh, Shabbos Kodesh,
Psalm for the Sabbath day on page 27 as we remind ourselves that it is good to cultivate thankfulness.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, מזמור שיר ליום השבת. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות.
איש פועל לא ידח שיר לא יבין את זאת בפרחות. כי הנה אלוהיך אדוני, כי הנה אלוהיך.
צדיק אתה מה יפרח, ארז בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו להגיד, כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא עוולת בו.
On page 29, אדוני מלך כיוס לובש. מקולות מהירים רבים, אדירים.
עדותיך נאמנו מאוד, לביתך נא בקודש אדוני לאורך ימים. עין 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 עין
Those in mourning, those marking a yard site, or those whose custom it is to do, I invite you to rise with me on page 30 for Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, v'yomad divrach urutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevorach le'olam u'me'omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitwoman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha brechu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiron b'yama v'yimbu amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimbu amen. Aseh shalom b'mbomav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimbu amen. I invite you all to rise as you're able on page 39 for the Baruch Hu, the call to community worship. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Voed. You may be seated if you wish. Baruch et Adonai Melech HaMashiach Dum. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב והרבים, page 40, אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבתה. הם חיינו ויורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה ועבודך תשים ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. The Shema is on page 41. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובישעריך. We continue quietly on 42. V'hayam Shmo Tishmo. Martem otam et bnechem. V'yomer etanam shalem u'teper u'nemenem zon. L'man tizku v'asitem kol mitzvotav b'shem b'rashim lech. Adonai Elohechem Emet on page 43. Emet ve'emunah kol zot v'kayam ha'kihu aleinu v'aleinu. Performing wonders beyond understanding, marvels beyond all reckoning, God places us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter. Yoseh lanu nisim v'nagama v'faro otot muftim ba'adma b'necham. And God's children beheld the power of the divine. They praised and acknowledged God's name on the top of page 44. Umalchuto b'ratzon kiblu aleihem. Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba. V'amru chulam mi chamocha boilim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lo tosef ele malchutcha chavonecha bokei yam lifnei Moshe ze elianu v'yamru Adonai yimlok le'olam v'evene'emar ki v'dadna ad Yaakov golom yad chazak mimenu baruch ata Adonai Ga'al Yisrael, page 45. Hashkiveinu Adonai Shalom Yamneinu Malkeinu L'chaim Ufos Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, spread over us your canopy of peace. V'taknini b'yatzatov v'melech U'v'tzel knafecha tastirei Ki el shomreinu matzilenu ata Ki el melech hanun v'rachum ata U'shmor tzeitenu u'vaweinu L'chaim u'shalom etav yad olam U'fos aleinu sukkot shlomecha Baruch ata Adonai Hapores sukkot shalom aleinu V'akol amo Yisrael V'al Yerushalayim. We rise on 46 for V'shamru, the biblical sanctification of the day. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam ay 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 b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. In just a minute, we will daven the Amidah quietly and privately from pages 47 through 52. You can use the Hebrew on one side, the English on the other, or simply take this time for quiet reflection and speak the words from your heart to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, who I am certain is listening. Yikdav yikdash shemei rabba, yamad yivrach yerutev yamlich malchutei b'chaychon v'mechon v'chayr chol beit Yisrael, v'agalav zman kori v'yemeru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba m'vorach le'olam u'le'olam ha'ya, yiparak v'yishtabach, v'yipar v'yitchoman v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'glev l'as meir kudesha, v'rechu li'elu b'kol b'chatav v'shirata, v'shiratav v'nechmata, v'niram b'yalma, v'yimru, amen. עושה שלום במרומם, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. We rise as we're able on 53. ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל זבם ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבועות בכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדונינו ואלוהי אבותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא עליון קונה שמיים וארץ מגן אבות בדברו מחיי מתים במאמרו האל הגדול שאין כמוהו המניח יעמו ביום שבת קודשו כי בם רצה להניח להם כי בם רצה להניח להם לפניו נעבוד ברב ופחד ונודה לשמו בכל יום תמיד ניון הברכות אל ההודעות אדון השלום מקדש השבת מברך שביעי ומניח בקדושה ליעמדו שני עונג זכר למעשה וראשי אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ורצונו בנוחתנו קדשנו מצוותיך ותנחכים בתורתך סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בשבועתך וטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. והנחילנו עד אליהם באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך ונכבה ישראל מקדשי שמך ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת יתקרא וקדש שמי רבה ביומם דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חון ובמי וחיי רחוב בית ישראל בגליו זמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עלל מיומיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתחומן ויתנשא ותדע ותלך ותלך שמי לקודשה ברכו ליאל למקום ברדה ושירתה שכבדה ונחמתה דמרם ביומה ויאמרו תתקבל צלטון ובהום דכל ישראל קרם ובהום די ושמי ויאמרו יהי שלמה רבה מן שמי וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל ויאמרו עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן. ברוך תהיה. That you may be seated if you wish.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. I'm so happy to see all of you here. In 2016, I was sitting at my desk and I saw an ad that the ADL was bringing. Rabbi, can you move this for me? That's good. Is it good? The ADL. Would you like an apple box to stand on? Just remember, you're off Monday and I'm not. Is it better? Okay. In 2016, I was sitting at my desk and something came across my email about the ADL of San Diego hosting some guy I'd never heard of. So of course I had to find out who this guy was and why he was coming. And I started reading about him and I'm like, wait a second. This guy's coming to town and he's speaking at all these schools and he's not speaking to my students at the Community Jewish High. The Community Jewish High is a partnership between Tifereth Israel and Temple Emmanuel, welcoming students from 8th through 12th grade. So I called ADL multiple times and no one called me back, which is never, ever a good choice with me. So I picked up the phone and I found their newest intern. And I said, LeRon, you don't know me. I want Frank Mink, and I want him at my school on this date. I'm going to hang up the phone and see how long it takes you and how good you are at your job. And I hung up the phone, and 20 minutes later, he called me and said, I have Frank Mink. I'm like, great, we're good. So roll ahead to 2023, all these years later at Community Jewish High. This year, I have had, between myself and our faculty, we have fielded more concerns from parents and students about what our children are facing in their schools with the rise in anti-Semitism. And as I was sharing this with our president, Lisa Hernandez, and Rabbi, they're like, okay, what do we do? And we started brainstorming. And Lisa said, get Frank Mink. And I said, okay. And she said, no, really, get Frank Mink. And I said, okay. And I pulled out my phone, and I called my friend Frank Mink. And he said, let's do this. So I'm not going to tell you any more about this man. I know he's very controversial, so I'm really excited for you to meet who this man really is. And I'm going to let him tell you about his background, because he can do it far better than myself. So I'd like to introduce to you my friend, Frank Mink, telling us my story, my way, how I lived and survived and now thrived. And if you want to learn more about it, read his very difficult book to read. It's very difficult to read. So, welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm probably just going to stand in this area if that's okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, I don't work with the ADL, just to put that out there. Like I don't speak on behalf of them. Nothing like. I stand up against hate differently than they do. And that's just our own business, and they do their way, and it's their way, and I do my way. So, and there's no bad thing. We do things differently. So, I believe in the Talmud. It says you should always start out with a joke. Now, I don't know if it's really in the Talmud. I just heard a rabbi say it one time, and I've stole it, and now I use it all the time. So here's my joke. At one time in my life, because of the color of my skin, I thought I was better than and loved more by God than others. That's the joke. That's the joke. Now, I know there's some people in here, because we have different leanings and different beliefs on things, but I know there's some people who say, well, that's not really racism. Racism is a system that oppresses others. That's racism. And they're right, but it didn't fit my joke, so I didn't use it. It would be too long to go through the whole definition, and you don't have to explain a punch log. You get it. All right, so look, I was born and raised not Jewish at all. I was born and raised Catholic, actually. Had no idea of DNA, none of this. So I'll tell you real quick, the reason why I was born with the name Bertolini, Italian. That's my dad. My dad was this little Rocky Balboa. My mom really went for the bad boys type woman in Philly, and my dad is a little Rocky Balboa lookalike. Really tough little guy from the streets and Italian, and Frankie Bertolini. And so I'm born to this drug-fueled, alcohol-fueled relationship. Those two can't stop using, and they can't pay rent, so my mom had to move back to her house in her neighborhood where she came from, which was an all-Irish Catholic neighborhood. And when we got down there, my family, my mom, the Catholic Church even was like, you probably don't want to have him with that last name down here, because the Irish and the Italian really didn't get along. And she didn't want to raise a Dago. She had the choice. She didn't have to raise a Dago, because everyone's going to know by my name that I was a Dago. So they gave me her old maiden name. They figured, Mink's, we didn't know what Mink was. I didn't know what Mink was. We thought it was a Dutch name, but it didn't matter as long as it wasn't Italian. They didn't care. I could have been called anything as long as it didn't end with a vowel, right? So, So I grew up in that neighborhood. Look, me and my mom struggled. I'll give you the sob story. You know, for a long time, my mom was single. She would have some boyfriends off and on, but it was just me and her. We wound up moving into a little house and being on welfare, right, having food stamps. Back then, I was so embarrassed of that. You know, my mom would send me to the store, but now they have a little EPT credit card. Back then, they gave you a booklet of neon-colored money that was fake money, and you had to go, and you weren't allowed to have loosies, what they call loose bills. You had to have in front of the counter. You had to rip them out so they knew you didn't buy them on the streets for 50 cents on the dollar. So you'd have to go into the store and you pay for the stuff, and then you rip them out. How much do I need? And every time you do that, the hottest girl in the neighborhood comes walking in. You know what I mean? And you don't want to be pulling out food stamps in front of the hot girl. You know, I was just embarrassed. Just embarrassed. But I knew me and my mom struggled, and I was okay with that. My mom winds up getting remarried to a guy, an alcoholic. Alcohol and drugs is a main part of my life and in the neighborhood. And this guy moves in our house, and he doesn't like that I'm a dago. And he doesn't like me, period, really. You know, I was from the other relationship. He's trying to have a relationship with my mom. I'm just this other dude in the house. And he basically picked on, you know, we talk about bullying and picking. I mean, I lived at home with a bully for years. Like, he hated my guts. I couldn't talk right. I couldn't say anything right. I couldn't do anything right. And it was just the way it was. So basically, when I would go home some days, and he liked to put his hands on me. It broke his, I can give you all the sob stories. The guy just liked putting his hands on me as much as he possibly could. And give him any reason to do it, and he was going to do it. So one day I'm walking home from school, and I don't know how you came home from school, but I just tell you this so you get it. When I used to go home, I had to go past 4th Street, which was the last 4th Street. You know, it's little South Philly neighborhoods. And every day I would say, you know what, I'm going to get hit by a car today. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump out in front. And I know it's not going to kill you because everyone in my neighborhood gets run over by cars. You live in them little, small, narrow streets. You just do it. And it's always a cousin because we're all related. You know, you can't sue anyone. You just get hit by cousin Jimmy. You got hit by cousin Uncle Johnny hit you. You know what I mean? Like, people always got hit by cars. It was like the thing to do. And I'm the one kid in the world that wants to get hit by a car. And every time I get hit by the car, this, you know, self-preservation thing would always kick in. I was born an athlete. Like, my legs are the most unsexiest human being legs. Like, I'm so bow-legged, and muscles have always hung off my legs. Like, I mean, my uncles used to make comments and say I needed operations because I'm so bow-legged, but unbelievably fast. And every time that car would come, right out of the way, every time, right when it's about to hit me. And I would like juke out of the way. And then people are going around to because they would drive past me, almost hit me, scream at me, then turn in the street, come back down my street and knock on my door and be like, Frank's playing chicken. And I'm like, I wasn't playing chicken. I really wanted to get hit. Well, I wouldn't say that to anybody. I would just tell people I didn't know. Like, I never said to anyone, I really want to get hit. I just wanted to go to a hospital. I just did not want to go home with that man every day in my house. So, eventually about 13, I get in more trouble at school. I go home one day, make the story quick. I walk in the house, my stepfather's waiting for me. He beats the living crap out of me for getting in trouble at school again and tells me to pack my stuff. I'm going to move with my real dad. Now, my real dad lives up in southwest West Philly, and some of you here all know West Philly. There's a guy that sang the song about West Philly, born and raised on the playground where he spent most of his days. Well, he moved out of that neighborhood, and he was black. And I was white, and I moved into that neighborhood. And I went to an all-black school. There was 20 of us, not 20%, just 20 of us. And I was like one of the only older kind of white males that went there, and I was like a little skateboarder punk rock kid already by the time I went to this all-black school, which made me stand out more. And I'm an athlete, and I joined on all the sports teams, and I made all the sports teams. I was on this historical all-black baseball team. I make it on their baseball team, and they did not like it. I hated going to school every day. People would get jumped all the time. It was not safe in our bathrooms at school. If you were a boy and you had to drop a douche, you did not do it at school. You held it all day. I don't care if you were cramping. Don't do it at school because you were very vulnerable in that situation. It was just kind of the school we went to. So, I just remember real quick, what I used to do is I used to cut school. I started cutting school the whole last part of my last year of the school, 7th grade. And I would just, instead of taking the train up to school, I would get on a train and I would go the other way through West Philly, and I would go down to Center City, and I used to always sneak in Ben Franklin's house. That was like the thing to do, like for me. Like Ben Franklin's huge in Philly. He's an amazing guy. If you don't know a lot about him, you study him. He's a really great guy. But anyway, I used to go in, and all the class, since I was off at school, all the other people were there doing their school class trips. And what they would do is they would come out the back door, and I would sneak in. And sometimes they would leave all their school lunches because they would wait to come back and do all the Liberty Bell, and then they come back and they would sit in Ben Franklin's thing and they would eat. Well, I used to take some of their lunches, right, because I didn't have any food or money, and then I would go through the whole museum, reversed every time, and I would just go and I knew all the exhibits. Like if you go there now, I could be a guide and a tour. Like I just knew all of his little inventions, all of his speeches he did in France to get them on our side. I knew all this stuff, right? Fast forward real quick. I went back to school the next year. This is funny. I went back to school, and I started going to it was my mom's neighborhood, and they were like, yo, we're going on a class trip to Ben Franklin's house. So I'm telling all my friends, like, yo, I know everything. Wait till we get in there. I sneak in there. I'm bragging to everyone. I sneak in there all the time. I'm telling everybody, I sneak in there all the time, man. I'll tell you how we get in the back door. We get off the bus. I've never gone through the front of the place. Big sign says, free admissions, right? And I never went back to that place again. Like to me, after that, it was boring, it was dumb, it was so stupid. But I loved when I was stealing the knowledge. Like I gathered more when I was like stealing it, the knowledge. Anyway, that happened that year. So finally, anyway, at the end of that school year, I'm living with my dad, and we live in a really rough neighborhood. I mean, we're catty-corner to the housing project, the Pascal Street homes. Pepper Middle School, the school I just talked about, and if any of you ever want to Google it, not tonight, obviously, or maybe tomorrow, late tomorrow, Google Pepper Middle School in Philadelphia and see why it was closed down. And it was closed down due to the neglect, the violence, and just the not proper upkeep. And they built it on top of an old pig farm, and it sank about 3 inches every year. So that was one of the other reasons. They had to close this brand new school that they built. Anyway, typical Philly. So that summer, I got to go up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where my cousin lived on my mom's side of the family. And they live up in this area where they're the only normal people on this big, long road, and I'm not knocking Amish people, because Amish people are pretty dope, but, like, they were real Amish, yo. Like, they didn't reenact it like Williamsburg. Like, they didn't see white people come and go, oh, let's reenact turning butter. Like, they really turned butter. They really rode in horse and buggies. They really had no electricity except for the Mennonites. And, like, that's fascinating. That's National Geographic stuff. You know what I mean? It really is to me. Well, my cousin, the summer before, I had spent the summer up there with him because they moved my cousins out of the city, and they hated it, and they wanted to bring all of his cousins up as much as possible to pound home, like, hey, have fun. The summer before I went up there, he was a skateboarder punk rock kid, so I couldn't wait to go hang out with him again this summer. Again, I just went through this rough school. I'm still a punk rock skater kid, and I can't wait to go up and see what he's up to. Well, I'll never forget, I walk in his house. He's not home yet. He was out with his friends or whatever. So my aunt's like, go ahead and go up to his room. I won't say his name, but anyway, I go up to his room, and I walk in, and there's like a swastika flag hanging over it. He had like a balcony, so he had sliding glass doors, and he had like a swastika flag and a Confederate flag, and he had like newspaper articles about neo-Nazi skinheads and all this stuff. And my aunt, who are good people, like, they would have thought he was just going through a phase, you know what I mean? Because they took him out of the city, and he kind of was really rebelling against them taking him out of the city. So they were just like, he's kind of going for something. And I go up, and I'm like reading this stuff and looking at the stuff, and he comes walking in, and he used to have like the fin that went straight in the air, like he was like punk, he was like real punk rock. And so I couldn't wait to see him, and he came walking in, and he's shockingly different. He's just not normal in a sense at all, but he wasn't like punk rocked out. He kind of had like a nice flight jacket on. He had nicely cropped pants with these nice boots on. He obviously didn't have any hair anymore. And so he comes in, and we just start talking about what he's into. And that night, all these other neo-Nazis, they were these farm boys. They weren't Amish. There's no Amish neo-Nazi. Like, the Amish are pretty pacifist. But anyway, they're not the ones burning the crosses. There was these other white kids up in that area who also got into this neo-Nazi thing, and they would all come over to my cousin's house, and they come drink, and they come hang out, and they bring girls, one girl really mainly, but they were cool to me. They had cars. They were farm boys. They had big swastika tattoos. They were 16, 17 years old. I'm 13 going on 14. I think these guys are totally cool. And then when they would start talking about things, they would start saying things like, the multiracial society doesn't work. I'm 13. I have no idea what you're talking about. Not a clue. But when they start talking about blacks and whites not getting along, even my cousin would go like, yo, Frank, tell these guys. And these guys would always be like, what's it like? Like, do you really see black people all the time? You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, I take the train through West Philly. Yes, I see black people. And now imagine if I flipped it over to them and I sat them and was like, you really see Amish people all the time? Like, it's just, that was their perspective of living. This was my perspective of living. And these guys were fascinated by it. And they would talk to me about it. And I'm going to tell you, my parents never asked me about life. I could walk in with a black eye, my parents would be like, well, sucks to be you. I mean, that's just my parents' attitude and way they were. They weren't like, oh my God, can I help you? Oh my gosh, are you okay? That's just not my parents' parenting style. And these guys asking me, what's it like being around black people? Was someone asking me, like, how's your day? How's your life? And I loved it. I loved that they talked to me. And they asked me questions about where I grew up and how horrible it was, because I would tell them. So one night, all these white nationalist guys were all bringing me to this concert hall, and I still have the little skater haircut, and I don't look like any of them yet. And so as we're getting there, and there's more and more guys are showing up that look like them, my cousin's trying to say, like, we're going to go into this nightclub and go beat everybody up. Like, there was this, what they call Antifa, or the anti-fascist movement, or the anti-racist movement had this concert going, and they're like, yo, we're going to go in there and beat everybody up. So my cousin's trying to make us saying, yo, don't beat up my cousin. Don't beat this guy up. The one with hair. We know he has hair, but just don't beat him up too. And these guys that don't know him, we're like, all right, we'll try to remember. This one big neo-Nazi guy goes, I got him. And he grabs me, and I'm like that small to him. He grabs me and puts me right up on his shoulders. And he's like, let's go. And we go into the dance pit. Everyone's punching and kicking. And he's a big, big farm boy. And he just goes in and he's punching people, and he grabs somebody and he spins them around. And he goes, kick him, Frank, kick him. And now I'm on this big guy's shoulders, and I'm like trying to kick in the mosh pit at this guy. We called it this dance pit at the time, but I'm trying to kick at this guy, and I'm trying to do the best I can. Everyone's laughing and fighting, and this guy's trying to get away from us. And the bouncers came and kicked us out. And they did that all night long. All night long there was fights in this club. And it would be the group of neo-Nazis, and all these guys were on one side. And every couple songs they would say, all right, let's go get these guys. And they go beat everybody up. Anyway, getting too long into the story. The point of this story is when we all got kicked out together, and I'm standing with them, and then the nightclub ended, like the music was over, the lights were on, and everyone needs to go out and get to their cars, everyone just stood inside and were like, we're not going out there, because we were all out there. And you could see them all looking through the window. You could see them wanting to come out, or they did come out, and they were just scared to death. And I loved it. Loved every minute of it, of course. No matter what you want to say, I was a 14-year-old kid. I feared everything. I feared my parents. I feared my step-parents. I feared my school. I feared if I was going to have food to eat today. Now people fear me? Bad. It's on. So that night we go back to this little party, this after-party thing, and all these neo-Nazi guys and stuff are slapping me in my hair, and they're like, yo, when are you going to shave this crap off your head? And I said, I'll do it now if I can. And they all said, all right, let's do it. And all these older neo-Nazi, white nationalist guys grabbed clippers, and each one would do one row of my hair. They say, like, white power, or whatever. So now I'm in. I could get the black-white argument all day long. I'm living it. I'm living it. When I was younger, when I was like a little boy, I remember people would always say things like they would come back from the store and be like one of my uncles, and I'd be like, oh, what happened to this? What are you doing? He'd be like, oh, I went to the store today, and Johnny tried to Jew me. And everyone in my house would laugh, not that everyone in the neighborhood. It was like a neighborhood, oh yeah, Johnny always tried to Jew everybody. Or how do you start a Jewish parade? You roll a penny down the street, and everyone would laugh. And I remember asking my uncle one time, I was like, why is that funny? Like, I had no idea why. I was like, why is that funny? And he tries to tell me, he says these words, he says, Frank, he goes, the Jews are kind of notorious with money, and you know what? You'll get the joke when you're older. It's a really good joke. You'll get it when you're older. I go to my first rally with these guys. It was a Bible studies. And I go up to this Bible studies in Reading, Pennsylvania, and this adult man starts to talk to us about how Israel secretly takes money from the Federal Reserve and then goes and tries to start the next world war with it. Now, I'm a 14-year-old kid, and you're talking to me about the Federal Reserve. I have no idea. I'm 47, and I still don't know what the heck you're talking about when you talk about the Federal Reserve. But, they're saying that they're taking money from the Federal Reserve, and they're going to build this army to start this new world war. And all I remember was, I got the joke. I got the joke. I get it. And I always want to know what the adults, by this time now, I want to know what the adults know. They left me to fend for myself. I want to know what they know. So now I just started grabbing onto this in everything we do. And there's stories I will tell you that they say biblically that are so insane that they believe. They believe that Cain is the first, this are their words now, that Cain is the first evil Jew on the planet. That's why he kills his brother in jealousy. And that when he's told to go on, that he becomes the first Jew. And just to back this up, unfortunately, if any of you have to look at any of the stuff these people write, one thing you'll always see is they always say the Jews are the seed of Satan. And it goes back to that story. It goes back to that story. And they believe that. So now these people are preaching this stuff to me. And I can tell you that I grew up Catholic. Father Wassel never taught me this out of the Bible. Father Wassel never told me these stories that these guys are telling me. So again, I want to know this stuff. Becoming part of this movement, as you can see, look, God has just given me gifts. No matter how I have gifts. And I've always been able to get people into things that I was doing. If I wanted to build the biggest Philadelphia Flyers hockey fan base, I would go in my neighborhood and build a fan club. Like, I was just one of these guys. I just like to do those type of things, And so now I was like getting people all throughout my neighborhood and my dad's neighborhood into this neo-Nazi thing. Again, these are all neighborhood kids. From that, I started getting some more recognition, whatever. I did a couple TV shows. As a young white nationalist, I did these couple TV shows for ABC, like ABC News or something. And I got this little known name in the whole country as this young, because I have a tattoo, I have a tattoo across the top of my head, which I got when I was 15, right? Real smart decision. But I have a tattoo, and I still have it to this day. It goes right across the top here, it says Made in Philly, because that's where my parents made me at. So I have Made in Philly across the top of my head, and I got known as the Made in Philly guy. So now I get to travel. I start traveling around the country. I have a bunch of warrants for my arrest on a bunch of petty things out of Philly and Jersey and Delaware, because I was a tri-state kind of guy. And so I wound up making my way out to Indianapolis. And this is where it gets deep. This is where I'm getting deeper, because I was living in a real legitimate safe house with the whole thing's hidden, boarded up. You think it's an abandoned house, but it's not. It's a bunch of people living in there that were all wanted by the police in their areas. And these were a bunch where I would say, and it wasn't Timothy McVeigh himself, but it was a bunch of Timothy McVeighs. And I'm living in this house, and I'm going to tell you, as radical as I was, and take it for what you want, if they would have told me in one of those groups, one of those meetings in those houses, hey, Frank, we need someone to drive the truck, I would have said, okay. No doubt. No doubt. 100%. That's how radical I was. Radicalized I was. Anyway, I wound up making my way out to Springfield, Illinois. I get out to Springfield, Illinois, which is the home of Abraham Lincoln. It's not his legitimate home, but he lived a lot, and he had his law service there, whatever. They love the dude there, all right? Everywhere you go in Springfield, Illinois, you talk about Abraham Lincoln. And so I'm moving in, and I start recruiting all these neo-Nazis, and then I got my own cable access television show. And I went on cable access, and I would talk about our beliefs, and people started watching, and I got this little name for myself in Springfield. And I got up to and I'll tell you real quick, recruiting in the Springfield area was kind of easy. A couple of the guys I was meeting there were younger. I was younger. I'm only 16 at the time, so were the guys I'm meeting up with. And some of them got out of school, but some were still in school. And we would go meet them outside of school every day and just stand there. And all the skater kids and punk rock kids that were hanging with our friend kind of started gravitating towards us. Then I see some of them were getting picked on by some of the jocks. One day they threw something at us. And I said, I'm not going to deal with that. I got a big swastika on my neck at the time, and I got tattoos on my head, and I'm 16. I said, let's go. And I grabbed some of my guys, and we walked over where all these jocks were, offered them, any of them to fight. They were scared to death. I looked like a maniac. And these big jocks were like, we want no trouble with you. And I said, if you throw one more thing at these kids, or these boys, whatever I was, you throw one more thing at them, see what happens. And they stopped throwing things at them. Now all them skater kids love me. That's straight loyalty. They knew if I show up every day, nothing's going to happen. Just like I wish someone would have did for me in school. So I'm showing up and doing that. Anyway, for any of you who don't know, I just want to point out something that's really funny that happened this last couple of days. I'm not trying to get political, and I'm not going to get political on you here. But there was this big thing that just came out the other day who said, again, I'm not on either side, guys. I just want to say this. There's these right-wingers that wrote this big, long thing that said that Barack Obama, and I'm not picking up for Barack, I'm just pointing out a fact that's wrong. They said, since Barack Obama, there's been Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and a caliphate. Lie. I was fighting Antifa in 1993. Antifa, the anti-fascist movement, has started in, just facts, guys, started in 1949, 1948 in Europe, in England mostly, getting Nazi sympathizers out of Europe, out of England. That's the truth. So he didn't start it. And I wound up finding a guy in Springfield, Illinois, who was one of their members, who I didn't like. Some of my guys knew him, and I kidnapped him. And that's how I did my business. Like, if I didn't like you, or especially if you were part of that movement, the anti-fascist movement, you were my sworn enemy. I did more fighting and violence against them than I did anyone else throughout my whole time in the neo-Nazi world. Like I said, in that nightclub we went to, it was an anti-fascist nightclub. It was like their little thing. So, I kidnapped this guy on Christmas Eve. We kidnapped this guy, and no one would pay the ransom. Like, just nobody wanted this dude. So, like, you know what I mean? Everyone's like, ah, whatever, and no one paid for the ransom. So we had to wind up just torturing him and then letting him go. And when we let him go, he goes to the police. The police know I'm a big, huge troublemaker. And how do they know I'm not a local? It says it on my head I'm not a local. So I'm just in their town causing tons of trouble as this Philly guy, right? And with my accent, whatever. So they arrest me, guys, and this has been my, third major arrest in the time. And they're winging me in, and they're like, I used a firearm to kidnap him and put it in his face, and they're like, yo, you're not a juvenile no more. Like, you want to do big boy crimes? You're going to do the big boy time. So they charged me as an adult. And I just had turned 17. Just turned 17. Anyhow, I get put into segregation. I want to tell you this one story about, I'm in seg, the hole, for months because of my age. I didn't do anything bad. I wasn't a tough guy. I wasn't going around. I was just the youngest kid in the prison. So they kept me in the hole for my protection. Where I'm in there, 24, it was 24 hours a day at the time. They didn't have the 23-1 rule at the time. They did not. I was in there for every day until, like, on a Tuesday, I was allowed to get out and go shower and go to my visits if I had any visits, which I sometimes didn't. And other than that, it's in my cell. In my cell. So, you start talking to yourself. You start going insane. And what they did is they would always bring the whole, they'd bring us religious books. Which is funny because the whole reason why there is the thing called seg and segregation in the whole, it was started by the Quakers, and that was what they locked you in these rooms for a long time, and they would just give you the Bible back then and say, fix yourself. So it's funny that this process still is going on in a way to this day. So I remember I read the whole Book of Mormons while I was in there. I was going insane. And then I started reading the King James version of the Bible. And I would read that, and there's this great part in there where it says, if you want God to reveal himself to you, you have to fast. There's a whole big part about fasting. It says, but if you fast, you cannot brag or boast that you're fasting for God. Like, you're kind of ruin the whole credit system right there with him if you go around going, yo, I'm fasting, God's my dude. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do that. You have to keep it to yourself, right? So the whole week I decide, you know what? I mean, look, guys, of course I need a God in my life. I had a public defender. You need God when you have a public defender. So I was like, please, God. So I start reading this thing, and I was like, I'm going to start fasting. And on Friday, they come to try to feed me, and I pull my door shut because they open up a little slot for you, and I pull the thing down, and I would just reach my hand and pull the thing up so they couldn't put the tray on there because I knew if the tray came in my cell, I was going to eat it. I was always hungry. Always hungry. And so I would close the gate thing so they can't put it in, and because I couldn't close it all the way because it would cut my fingers off. So I would just pull it as far as I could and then leave it low, and it would stay there. And the guy would say, you're refusing to eat. And I say, yes, I'm refusing to eat. And they say, well, why are you refusing to eat? Now, again, my story, every time I go to court, it's on the news. The neo-Nazi with the television show who kidnapped people. Of course, it's kind of the news for them. So they want to make sure people don't think that I'm being mistreated. So they're like, why are you not eating? Are you trying to harm yourself? Are you trying to make a statement? And I'm like, nope, can't tell you. I didn't say I can't tell you. I would just be like, nope. So Monday, I already planned on eating. Sunday, the last meal comes by. I refuse to eat. The warden comes in, and the warden was just the head guy of the county jail, because it's a huge county jail, so it's not like a big warden. Like he was a guy who ran the jail, but he was a lieutenant in the police force too, or whatever. But he ran this huge county jail. I mean, thousands of people in there. So he comes to me on the Sunday night, and he pulls me out of my cell, and he goes, "Why are you not eating?" And at that time, because it was the last meal, I was like, maybe I could tell him. I was going to be like, "Yo, dude," because look, I'm insane. I'm fasting so that God will kill all the guards and pop my door and knock down the walls. That's what I'm like. The whole 3 days, I'm like, "Oh, if you're real, you're going to do it. If you're real, you're going to do it." So when he asked me why I'm not eating, I felt like telling him, like, "You better go home and say goodbye. Just prepare yourself. Some stuff's going down tomorrow, yo." I mean, I'm that insane. I'm that insane at the time. I really, and I'll never forget, he says to me, he says, "Are you trying to hurt yourself?" And I said, "No, I'm not trying to hurt myself." He says, "Well, to prove that, will you eat tomorrow?" Now, I'd already planned on eating tomorrow. So if I was like, "For you, Warden?" Definite. I'll eat tomorrow for you. He says, "If you eat tomorrow, I'm going to take you out of here and put you in general population. I think you're okay to be out there. You don't need to be in here." Because it's where they put crazy people. And I'm not, and it was horrible when that whole, people bang and scream all night. And I mean, people defecate on the floor and then flood their cells so it gets in everyone else's cell. I mean, that's a pretty daily occurrence where I was at. And I'll never forget this moment and this time when I'm walking out of that cell when I ate my breakfast in the morning, which I wolfed down so fast, and he came and got me, and I was walking with my little basket with my jelly roll and all my stuff, and I'm walking through, and there's this feeling that no one can take from me, no one can, real or is he real, not real? There was this moment right then and there. He says, "I'm not going to give you what you want. I'll give you what you need." Because he didn't, I was talking to myself. He needed to get me out of there. And that's what he did. Instead of me killing all the guards and knocking down the wall, he just got me put in general pop, right? And while I'm in there, I wound up running into this black kid named G, because when you're in the county jail, there is no big gang affiliations yet, because, I mean, we all have our own gang affiliations, but you're in the county jail, you're waiting trial, so you're trying to be a good boy. You don't want to get in more trouble while you're in the county jail, you know what I mean? So everyone's kind of cool with each other. And there was this kid named G, this black kid who, when I first got in there, just started talking to me. He was like, "Yo, you're the Nazi from TV." You know, I was like, "Yeah." He was this black kid, right? He was like, "You're that Nazi from TV." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You know how to play spades? A card game?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "Let me show you." So within the first couple of days, he started showing me how to play this game called spades. But he was showing me how to cheat. He would show me like all these little symbols and all these little things on how to cheat, and it was just cool, and we had a lot of fun. And then we go play the old guys, and we take all their money, and peanut butter and jelly is what we played for all the time, peanut butter and jellies. Anyway, that's the type of stuff going on. I wound up getting 3 to 5 years in prison. That was my sentence. So now I get out of the county jail, and I go upstate. When I go upstate, I'm there for a couple of days. I'm very well taken care of. I know I'm a small, cute white guy, and you think, man, you should probably have to worry. You got to remember, I had a big swastika on my neck, tattoos on my head, and the Aryans were waiting for me. They knew who I was. I mean, I had my own TV show. So these people took it as a pride to protect this young little celebrity to them. Like, they thought I was super cool, and I was super well intelligent to them. A great example, just to give you a great example on this, was I'm in this prison, and one of the first few days I'm in the prison, I'm meeting up with all these Aryans. We're out in the yard, and guys introducing me, "Oh, that's the neo-Nazi with the TV show, blah, 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 blah." And earlier, there was men in prison who dressed like women. That's just the way they live their life, so be it. And we call them the Queens, right? The Queens, that's the name of their thing. So the Queen one day walks by me, and I was rude to her. It was a black queen from Chicago. And the next day, she sees me, and I have my back to her, and I'm talking to all the guys in the Aryans, and they're looking behind me because she stops. And when she was, again, there was a fence because there was a walk track right there, and she was like, "Hey, what's up, Nazi boy," or whatever she called me at the time. And I turn around, and it's a man dressed like a woman in prison. And I remember seeing her, and I was like, "What's up?" And she's like, "You're cute," right? And she just walked on, and she gave me this wave, and just being trying to put me out there in front of my friends, right? So this one Aryan guy yells out real quick. He goes, "Yo, when the master race takes over," which is this saying is very commonly used in the white nationalist movement. When the master race takes over, so-and-so's getting shot. So-and-so's dying. So-and-so, when the master race takes over, they're gone, right? So he says, Frank, when the master race takes over, he's going to get shot twice. He's black and he's gay. And whatever it was, in that second, it snapped me back into everything, and I turned around, I was like, no, guys. If he's black and he's gay, he's not going to be with a woman. He's not going to reproduce his race. It's a good thing. And they were all like, damn, that's deep. Like, that was the most deepest racism. That's thinking racism right there. That's deep. That's deep stuff. So I was the most intelligent racist I'd ever met. And I'm 17 going on 18 years old in there. I'm in the same prison with John Wayne Gacy. It's in the same prison system. I only spent a short time in that same exact prison as him, but it's same prison system. And I was in the same prison with him for a minute, in my transfer. So anyway, I wound up making it down to Shawnee, and I wound up meeting up with G again, and G's down there with a couple of his friends, and we're all in this one sub-block with a lot of my Aryans and a lot of his gang. He was a vice lord. And so there was a lot of peace there between us, whatever. We had multiple different enemies of other groups, so we were kind of two groups, so we could all get along. And, I used to play cards with G all the time. There was a kid named Tony. We all started playing football together a lot. We played basketball all the time. And all my Aryans, you would think, well, aren't these older bikers? Again, they think I'm, like, the most amazing racist in the world. So, like, they see me playing with black kids because when I played basketball with the bikers, they suck. They just do. They get fixture transmission at 2 years old. They don't know how to dribble a basketball. They don't know how to cradle a football and be out of stiff. They just don't know how to do these things. I do. So when I played football with them, it was just embarrassing. Like, I would run backwards. I'm a big trash talker. I grew up playing sports. I could trash talk like anybody. And so they hated playing. The white guys hated playing with me. So when they see me playing with the black kids, they're like, well, at least that's good because you can run with them and you can go with them. And I would just play. Those guys just kind of become cool with me. And this is where, like, the whole American History X, which has nothing really to do with me. Just there's some things that we don't know how they got. It doesn't matter. It's God's movie, not my movie. I'm going to get released from prison. I'm still cool with my Aryans. I never left the gang in prison. You don't do that. That's not real. That's not real. You stay with your crew, and I still always thought I'm being a neo-Nazi when I get out of here. Like, I'm cool with a couple of Latino guys, and I'm really cool with a bunch of black dudes, whatever. But when I get back out of here, we go back to real life. And so when I get back out, things aren't going well for me. I go back to Philly. When I get back to Philly, there's this neo-Nazi group that I helped start that is now bigger, and I come home a legend. I kidnapped an Antifa member. I had a TV show. I was running guns, just whatever. My ego, all my ego. And so these guys kept feeding my ego. So I wanted to get back into that. But I remember just being around people who would say things, just the most ignorant, stupid black things about all black people smell like this. And I'm like, oh, they don't. And I would think, but I used to say that. When I was his age in this movement 5 years ago, I said exactly what he thought. And I thought I was so smart. And now I hear it and I'm like, that's so dumb. Like, don't talk to me anymore. So I started to have this feeling on black, Asian, and Latino issue. I was like, you know what? I got this. We're all equal. I did. I was like, you know what? I got it. I see. We're all equal. But I'm still going to hate the Jews. I didn't know any. So I'm looking for work. And when you have a swastika on your neck, tattoos on your head, skinhead written across your knuckles, and an aggravated kidnapping on your record at 19 years old, these aren't good people skills. You know what I mean? HR isn't like, oh, swastika. It's got to be management. Definitely management guy, right? It's just so. A buddy of mine comes to me who is also a white nationalist, comes to me and says, Joe, do you still need work? I just got home, still out of prison. I said, yeah, I'll do any work. He goes, I can get you a job working at this antique show, this like little antique road show type thing in the Cherry Hill, New Jersey Mall. He's like, will you work there for this weekend? You know, it's $100 a day. You just carry it in and out antique furniture all day for people as they buy it, they auction it off or buy it. You take it out for them and you put it in their cars. And I was like, all right. I'm like, yeah, $100 a day, definite. So, and as soon as I say it, he goes, but I got to tell you, my boss is a Jew. And he, not religiously Jewish, but he talks Jewish, he acts Jewish, and you'll see when you meet him. And do you still want the job? And I said, yeah, I said, I don't care. I was like, what does he know about me? And he goes, oh, I told him everything about you. And he says, he doesn't give a rat's but what you believe, just don't break his furniture. And I showed up, and Keith would say, "Ugh, oy vey, ugh, oy, what are you doing, my friend?" He was just this Upper East Coast Jewish guy. He just was. And so I worked for him the whole weekend. I made like $600 in tips, and I figured, he's going to Jew me in the end. He's going to come up and say, "I know you made $600. I don't have to give you any money. You made the money I promised that you would make." Like, I have this, look, not in an anti-Semitic way, we all kind of do that, where you are going to work one day and you plot out the argument that you're finally going to have with that one guy who you can't stand at work, and you just plot out the whole argument, and you're waiting, and you're like, "And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to bait him with that, and I know he's going to say that," and like, you do that. We all do it. Unless you're so spiritual, you'll float right out of here. We all do those moments, you know what I mean? We all have those little moments. Well, I had this moment with this dude where I was like planned out the argument, like, he's going to say this, and then I'm going to say that, da-da-da-da-da. He comes in, and I'm loading up the rest of it in this truck, and he goes, "Hey, I owe you money, don't I?" And I was like, "Yeah, you do," waiting for him to say something different. And he says, "What do I owe you?" And I was like, $300. And he says, "Okay, 1, 2. He pulled out this wad of money. He's like, 1, 2, here's $300. Here's an extra $100. You were a really good worker. Now I got $1,000, including the 6. And I remember, all I thought about was, son of a gun. Like, I had such a good argument waiting for you. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted you to step on that landmine. I was waiting for you to step on that landmine. So he says, he's like, "Frank, we got to go back." It was like 2:30 in the morning, whatever. He says, "We're going to go back. You need to go back over to Philly." At the time, the Philly train that stopped running between 2 and 6 or whatever it was back then. They had a little time, and they weren't running. He goes, "Yo, can I take you back into South Philly in the truck?" I was like, "Sure, if you want to." He had a big truck, right? And I'm like, "You don't want to take it down them little streets, As we're driving over, I'm explaining to him like how to get down this street, and he goes, "You don't have to tell me how. I used to live down here in the 50s. I lived down, this is my old neighborhood." He's like, "My synagogue used to be right there on 4th Street." And I'm like, "Oh my God, the old big red building." I was like, "We burnt that." And I was like, "But we didn't do it." And we didn't do it anti-Semitic. It was just an old abandoned building by the time I got older. You know what I mean? It was just mischief night. It was just an abandoned building. So at the time, it sounded horrible. We didn't burn it down like that. It was just an abandoned building at the time. So I was explaining that to him, that we didn't do it personally. It was just an abandoned building that we all hung out in. It was this old synagogue, it was like a warehouse afterwards. So it wasn't that type of symbol to me at the time when it happened. Anyhow, let me get my foot out of my mouth on that one. So Keith's telling me about how I grew up in that neighborhood, whatever, and then when he's dropped me off, he says, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, I don't do anything. I pointed to the swastika. I was like, "I don't do nothing." He goes, "Why don't you come work for me?" And I showed up in Fox Chase every day. That's where his thing was, all the way up in Northeast Philadelphia. Every day I take the train up to Fox Chase, and I get in a truck with him, and he had all these people that refinished furniture for him. He had 2 major storefronts, one in the Plymouth Meeting Mall and the other one in this Cherry Hill Mall. And every week we had to get 3 sets of bedrooms, mahogany bedroom sets, brand new. Like, we had to refinish, get them in there, and 3 sets of dining room sets. So we had to travel a lot and go pick up furniture all the time. And I would just drive in a truck with this guy. He would pick me a lot to go with him. The O.J. Simpson trial was going on at the time, just to give you a little time of reference of what's going on in the world. So I would read the best to my ability, because it's funny when people, as I made this transfer over to Judaism, people always say, "Can you read Hebrew?" I go, "I barely can read English," and it's true. No, but I could read enough. But I would read the Philadelphia Daily News, and that's in Philadelphia is always the best standard of where you are in life is, can you read the Philadelphia Daily News? That's how you know if you're literate or not. So I would read the Philadelphia Daily News to him about the O.J. Simpson trial, and we would just talk and talk and talk. Being in a truck driving through New Jersey, we all know it's a garden state. More like a turnpike state. So, but we would drive through and just talk and talk. And I'll tell you guys, I would do things, and some of you might do this too, and some of you growing up might do this, where I would break something, I'd knock something over, and I'd always go, "Oh my God, I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid." I was my quickest defense whenever I make a mistake. I'm just stupid. So finally, one day I broke this marble top table. I said, "I'm stupid," and Keith's still alive and all, guys, so you can find Keith. He's still alive and kicking, doing a lot of stuff, but he came over to me, and he gripped me up by my neck, because I was like, "Yo, Keith, I'm so stupid," and he grabbed me, I'll never forget, and he said, "Frank, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. Let's go." And that's his words, and that is Keith. That is exactly Keith. So we get in the truck, and Keith's just unloading on me one day, going, "Yo, Frank, you need to stop saying you're stupid. Like, you're one of the smartest people I've ever met." He's like, "You're super smart." So He's dropping me off that day, and I'm waiting for him to open up, because he paid me in cash every week on Friday. So I'm waiting for him to open up my envelope and take like $200 out for breaking the marble top table, which I would have totally been like, you got it. I should have done that. But he pulls out the bottom of my envelope, doesn't open it at all, and just hands it to me. And says, go out, I'll get with you next week, all right? And I got out of the truck, and for whatever reason, guys, I'm walking home, and I just knew. Like, I just knew I was wrong. There was this overwhelming sense and feeling again where I was just like, you idiot. Like, who are you to judge people on this planet? You know, real quick, I had a real quick boss one time. I lived in Terre Haute, Indiana, in between my Indianapolis to my Springfield days. I got this job doing concrete work for a guy who was not racist at all. He was just this pot smoking. Again, in our movement, in the neo-Nazi movement I was part of, no drugs allowed. If you did drugs, we kill you. Because drug addicts are always the first people to snitch on your crew. Always. So no drugs, but tons of alcohol, I was full. Look at where I come from in South Philly, an Irish Catholic. I mean, we're all alcoholics. It's the truth. So, but I remember one day when I was working for this concrete guy in Terre Haute, Indiana, and he was obsessed with Oprah Winfrey. He was a white guy, and he loved Oprah Winfrey when she was just barely coming out in that area. So he would talk about this woman named Oprah. And I remember he used to smoke weed at work all day, and he always go, he's like, Frankie, what a hit. And I'd be like doing some concrete work for him. I'd be like, no, that's ruining the white race. And he'd go, yeah, I own a business. You're homeless. I'm ruining the white race. Good one, Frank. Like that, you know, just to give you a point of reference. So guys, like, I just made this real decision in my life to where I know for the last 6 months, up until this part with Keith, where I was starting to always make exceptions for my hate. I hate all black people except for John and Rodney. Like, I hate them all except for the two that I know. But the ones I don't know, I hate them. And I still was doing that, and then here's the Jewish guy, where I'm like, I hate all Jewish people except for the one that I get. Just is embarrassing. It's not smart. It just doesn't seem smart to me to make this decision that I'm going to keep sticking with this I'm the master race crap. So I started to get out of it, guys. And when I started to get out, I just stayed away from them. I stopped. When people would talk, I would just avoid the conversation. If people brought up anything that had anything to do with that realm, I got away from it and stayed away from them. Even though I kept wanting to scream at people going, no, it's wrong. You're wrong. Like, that's not true. But I would just walk away until, and this is pretty, 28 years ago, 2 days ago, April 19th, 1995, sorry, April 19th, 1995, I'm sitting at home, and a bomb goes off in Oklahoma City. And I've seen this picture of this dead little girl, and then I didn't know Timothy McVeigh, but like I said, I known Timothy McVeigh's, had run and rubbed elbows with people like him all this time and would have been him. And now I see the real deal. So I went to the FBI. And now I'd already been out of the movement for 6 months, so I couldn't go in there and rat on anyone or anything that knew was going on. I just wanted to unload my life. And I did with these FBI people. And then they passed me on to the Anti-Defamation League, and then a couple other groups were like, hey, why don't you come speak? Now this is great that I get to go around and speak and say, hey, I used to do bad things, but I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to do good, not just say I used to be bad. So I started Harmony Through Hockey, where we've helped hundreds of kids, hundreds of black kids join and play the greatest game on earth, and that's not a debate, it's hockey. So real quick, let me move on here. I'm doing that. I keep relapsing, by the way, because once I wasn't allowed to, now I was allowed to do drugs. I got to tell you that, because for a long time we weren't allowed to do, and then I did, and then I picked up a habit, and my mom died of fentanyl. It's ravished my whole family. My whole family's been ravished by drugs, and I was almost one of them. So, guys, I'll tell you this. I got married, moved to Des Moines, Iowa, started coaching hockey, got very into coaching hockey, won tons of national championships with all of our Gen Zers. I've coached tons of kids are, and I took them to the national team. Iowa kids, we played Canada. We played, we won some big tournaments as not just their head coach, as a recruiter or assistant coach. I had parts with other great coaches, but we all gelled together and made some amazing teams and amazing runs throughout this country. And with our hockey teams, our youth hockey teams, traveled all over, and got real into that. My kid got real into it. Anyhow, still trying to stay sober, but one time I started to make this documentary, and I was really struggling with God, really struggling. There was this Christian conservative kind of, I'm not getting, it had turned me off to this, right? So I started doing this documentary about all religions in Iowa. You can say, what the heck, there really ain't that many religions, it's pretty white in Iowa, but actually it's this really crazy diverse place. Not people-wise, just really, there's the Maharishi University is there, that's the only one in the whole world, is in Fairfield, Iowa. All these meditators go and live from Berkeley to New York, all live in Fairfield, Iowa now and study, transcendental meditation. It's crazy. And they have all these different little spots, but the one was, I had known one of the rabbis that was close to us, right by my house, and me and him always stayed in touch because of my story. And so when I said, yo, will you do this documentary with us we're doing all religions of Iowa in this doc. Oh, by the way, the longest standing Muslim mosque in all of North America is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's called Mother Mosque Number 1. It's this tiny little mosque. It's the first ever one, left standing. So that's what I mean, crazy little place. So I go to do this thing with Rabbi Jacobson, and we're sitting there, and he says, are you doing a documentary about how you're Jewish? And I was like, no, I'm not Jewish. And he goes, well, where'd you get Mink from? Where'd you get that name from? And I said, it's my mom's maiden name. It's like Pennsylvania Dutch or something like that. And he goes, that's not, he said, that's Ashkenazi. He's like, why don't you look into it? So I got to a couple of my uncles, and I said, hey, is this rabbi saying that this is a Jewish last name? And my one uncle, now I remembered when I first became a neo-Nazi, he came to me and said, we have part Jew in us. And I didn't believe him because he's one of them jerk uncles who just would bust our chops all the time, you know what I mean? So I just didn't believe him. I thought he was just busting my chops, right? So I wrote him about it, and he goes, yeah, I told you that a long time ago, right? So anyway, wound up doing a DNA test, find out it's true. And it was at such a point in my life where I started to struggle. So how do I strive from right now? Let me just get through this part and get you out of here. So in Iowa, going through this horrible divorce with my wife, I relapsed again. My oldest son dies in a car accident. Then my best man at my wedding, who was like one of my cousins, who was like all my older cousins. I was the baby of this huge chunk of all male cousins, like 8 of us, and they were all crazy. And I was the baby of the group. And I was close with each one of them. And I swear, drug overdoses, murders, deaths, and suicides just is plaguing all of them, right? And I'm like in the middle of this divorce, and I just remember, and I lost this organization that I founded called Life After Hate. Like, it kind of got taken away from me, and which I probably should have, because I was using again and going through so much stuff in my turmoil in my life. I can keep going down the list of all these bad things that happened to me, and it was about a 5-year span where I just couldn't hold any. And then me and my wife were getting a divorce, and so we were having such a horrible time through our divorce. She got a no contact. We both got no contacts. We were trying to play the divorce game with each other. And I knew my kid was going to play at a hockey tournament in Omaha. And so I hurried up and behind her back got the job as the referee at this hockey tournament, knowing I would see my kid. Because it was her weekend that weekend, and I was like, nope, only thinking about myself. And that's what the truth of all this is. I always just thought about myself. Anyway, I go and do this hockey tournament as the referee, playing the ghetto Mrs. Downfire here, and to see my kid. And I wound up getting arrested. And it was just, I was at the bottom. Just everything was gone. By the way, in the midst of this time, I find the one Jewish girl in all of Des Moines, Iowa, and I start dating her. Like the one only Jewish girl in all of Des Moines, Iowa, and I find her in the midst of my divorce, and I start dating her real quick. And I leave her house one day, and the world collapsed on me that day, and I pulled into this church parking lot, and I screamed up. I was like, please, God, just kill me. I can't kill myself. I know I can't do that because I don't want to pass this on to my children. Please just let a telephone pole, let a Mack truck, please take me out. I can't take this pain anymore. And while I'm screaming up to God in the car, and you take from what you want from this story, as I'm screaming up to him in my car, that girl calls me. And I pick up the phone, and I'm like, what? And she's screaming, crying. And I'm like, what? And she goes, get back to my house. My sister just killed herself. Why I'm screaming to God to please kill me. And guys, you can take, again, I'll say it again, this is mine. The whole world just stopped for a second. The car stopped. Everything just stopped. And this voice came to me and said, get to California, I have a job for you. Now, you could say, why California? Because 12 years earlier, I don't think I told you, I'm very involved with recovery, and that's, I was at a recovery group thing one day, and this man came up to me 12 years ago and came up to me and said, a fellow Heb. Didn't know I was Jewish at the time, so when he said this, I was in LA making a TV show on doing interventions on neo-Nazis. So this little Jewish dude comes up to me at this group thing that we go to, and he comes up to me and goes, fellow Heb. And I was like, I'm not Jewish. It's like I'm a former neo-Nazi, and I do interventions. And anyway, this little old guy goes, well, you look Jewish to me, whatever. Me and that guy had stayed in touch throughout the years, just randomly, would just stay in touch with each other. Just once every 2 years, I would call him, or he would get a hold of me and just say, how you doing? I said, I'm doing all right. Usually I was bull crapping with him. And that voice said, go to California, meant call that guy. Call the guy. And I called that guy, and I said, you're gonna become my recovery rabbi. I'm moving to LA, and you're gonna do this with me. And he said, absolutely, come to LA. Packed up my stuff, moved to LA. To get to LA, and I remember thinking, I think God wants me to be an actor. I think Hashem's like, yo, you're going to go to LA, because my guy, my dude who says I look Jewish, he's actually a director, a somewhat famous director and writer in LA. So I'm like, wow, he must really want me to go and be an actor. But I remember now, because I didn't fully listen, because I never fully listen to anything, because I'm too, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about, and that's all I think about. So I thought when he said actor, but really he meant activist. When I got to LA, a lot of stuff goes down, and people, you can have your own political beliefs, and you could talk about things that have happened in our country, like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor should not be dead. Those men that did that raid should not have done that raid. The raid team, the SWAT team that did the raid, that caught the bad guy, was only a couple miles away doing the original raid, and then they were going to come over and raid her house, but those cops were bored. It was the pandemic. They were bored. This is true. And they just figured, we'll go in before the SWAT team gets here. And that's why the guy who got shot stood in the wrong position, because he didn't know how to do a raid. And he stood in the funnel of death, as they call it. And he got himself shot. And it's this whole big thing. And I just remember going, that woman should not be dead. He shouldn't be dead. While all that's going on, the government calls me and says, hey, we heard that you knew some neo-Nazis that became cops. Is this true? And I said, yo. This guy's a neo-Nazi. This guy was in a famous neo-Nazi band that sung songs about starting a race war. And the name of the band is called Arresting Officers. I'm not joking. You can Google this stuff. So I'm not trying to. And God said, that's it. So the government called me. I went and I spoke for them. And then when I got done, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, with all the craziness that was going on at that time, there was a lot of protesting and riots and speeches, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, because now I could say this now and I don't care, came to me and said, we're going to put a bullet in your head, you keep talking. Our own police. That's what happened, guys. So I went and I hid out on a boat for 2 years in Wilmington. I was like, you want to find me? You got to come find me on a boat, because if anyone knows where I am, I can just untie my boat and go somewhere else. You know what I mean, or whatever. So I did that. And why I did that, I started to make this real conversion over to Judaism. My rabbi would come visit me. I started to wrap tefillin. I started to humble myself before God. And as I was doing that on my boat, it was funny. Every day I would wake up and I would always do all my blessings and prayers, and and as I would do that, I would start to get into my activism. And then I got very, very active in my recovery, because my man, the guy I'm talking about, my recovery rabbi, who told me the only payment I have to do for him is that he held my hand and walked me a dozen steps closer to God. And he said, now reach your hand back and walk another man a dozen steps closer to God. And in that 3 years of being on that boat and where I'm at right now today, it's all about others. My whole life has changed when I started to just think about others. So the activism that I started to do, and this goes with our Judaism, obviously, because it says to stand up for the poor all the time. No matter what we want to say, you could be anti-abortion, you could be anti-gay marriage, but there's one pretty consistent message. We have 34% of the world's women's prison population. And we only have 3.8% of the world's population. But we have 34% of the world's women's prison population. And it goes back to policing. It goes back to pulling us out of cars and handcuffing black people in front of their children while they search their cars in front of them for every little crime. We can fix this. We have to fix this. If we don't fix this, we're going to have 3 million people in prison in 10 years. And we're going to have almost half of the women in the world locked up. Now, I know China doesn't keep the best numbers, so we can't trust what their numbers are. But if we're comparing ourselves to them, we're still doing the wrong thing. And that's my job today. I know that we can do this because, for one, I believe truly in the Gen Zers. I know some people have some doubts. I believe that the Gen Zers, at the end of their time, when I'm way dead and gone, they're going to write the obituaries to racism in this country. It's on its way to happening. The Gen Zers are now starting to talk about mental health. We are in a massive mental health crisis. Everyone agrees, everywhere, on every channel, on even the news network that's named after an animal, we all agree, I don't want to get political, we all agree there's a mental health crisis. The Gen Zers are now talking about mental health days. And what does that news network always do? Oh, the Gen Zers need their mental health day, baby. We're in a mental health crisis, and these kids see it, and they're starting to take care of it, and we're going to mock them. That's what we're doing right now. So it's time to stand up for them. I think we have one of the greatest generations in American history is coming up. It's these Gen Zers. They care. They're smart. They don't fall for everything on the internet like my generation. My generation falls for everything on the internet. They at least go, wait a minute, I've seen these guys fall for this stuff. I'm going to look into it a little bit more. It's real. And that's my job, is to help them be able to write that obituary to racism. If I could do that, I'm pretty happy. And so I coach Gen Zers for 12 years. I see the work ethic. I see the beauty. I work right now in Long Beach, California. I work with like 10 amazing Gen Zers. They're not lazy. They're not stupid. They're actually pretty smart, pretty into things. And I want to stop us, because every generation talks bad about the next generation. We all do. We've done 57 Chevys and Frank Sinatra got talked about. All the kids today with the 50s or 70s, Frank Sinatra. Every generation talks about the next. They just didn't have a whole mouthpiece. They keep pounding home about the next generation. The next generation, them kids. We never had that before, and now we do. And these Gen Z kids, they don't care, which is great. They don't care. You can see the way they are. But it's the point of us, and some of us, our peoples, watching these things and then perpetuating it on them. The Gen Zers. They're our next generation. So one thing, we have a solution. We do want to talk about police reform. I do talk a lot about police reform, and it definitely starts with traffic stops. Take it for what you're worth. There's something wrong in this country. Other countries don't pull over people just to search their cars. They don't. England doesn't do it. Canada doesn't do it. They started doing it a little bit because they've seen the American cops doing it. And we're starting to lose numbers in policing all over the place. Every district and every sheriff's department are all running out of numbers of cops, because people don't want to be cops. And we could say, well, it's because of the liberal judges and DAs. No, it's because of continued bad behavior. And on top of that, we fought a war over a lie in Iraq. It's not a doubt, it's not a conspiracy. We should not have fought that war. It was a lie. And we sent all of our troops over there, men and women, to go fight and learn how to be an occupying force. 2, 3, 4 tours of duty over there. And then they come home and they become cops. Do you think 8 years of training on how to be an occupying force, they're going to come home and take 4 months of a police academy and now they're okay? No. They're pulling us out of cars. And we can fix this. Cops are not bad. And for everyone that says, well, cops were made to be slave catchers, no, they weren't. Ben Franklin made the first police department, one of the first police departments, and it was not to catch slaves. It was to stop prostitution and robbery in Philly, because Philly's always been Philly. Even back then, Philly's always been Philly. And that's what it was made for. It wasn't to catch slaves. We need our servants. We need them. Who's going to happen when there's a bank robbery? I know I'm preaching to the choir right now, but who's going to come in a bank robbery? The townspeople? Pew, pew, pew. No. We need cops. If there's a kidnapping, who do we call? The townspeople? No. We need them. When a car accident covers up the dead body so we don't all get, PTSD like they get from covering up the bodies for us. We need them. But we need to fix the traffic stops in the way that it's perpetuated on our black brothers and sisters. And then we need what they've been talking about, and I know you want to some people call them libtards. I don't care what you call liberals, it doesn't matter. They've been talking about early massive childhood development. And when we have a mental health crisis, we need to start getting those children as early as possible. You know why I know to do this? Because when I studied Judaism, I realized when people are so anti-Semitic at Jews, it's because they're the heads of banks. They're the heads of Hollywood. Well, yeah, we are the heads of Hollywood because we built Hollywood in the first place. So yeah, we are going to be the heads of that. But when they say, oh, the Jews are all the heads of banking. Yeah, we're also the head of medical fields. We're also the head of psychiatry fields. We're also the head of criminology. We're also the head of, you name it. You go down the list, and we're the heads of everything because we've made a generation of learning, of teaching children to read the Torah as soon as they're basically born. And it's stuck with us for the last 2,000 years. It's a heritage of learning. China learned on to do that. That's why China's become so intelligent. We need to do it here, and it starts with early massive childhood development so we can catch the early onsets of mental issues, behavioral issues, learning disabilities. We could do all these things if we got them in there early enough before they get in the first grade and become disruptive in school. So we have to do these things, and I don't know if it's going to take us to get 3 million people in prison and start talking about these real issues, what it's going to take, but it starts here and by keep having the conversation, and not about hate. It's about love. It's about love. So I love being part of this tribe with you all. It's been one of the most amazing journeys these last 3 years to really buckle down. My Hebrew is horrible. It's absolutely horrible, and I try to learn. But I do wake up every morning. I do my mitzvahs every day. And my first thing when I wrap tefillin, it says, love my fellow man as myself, as I wrap my tefillin, right? That's what my first thing I get to mention and think about in a day is, go love my fellow man, all mankind. That's my first act every morning. And it's been the greatest life I've ever had in the last 3 years. Hashem has truly taken care of me. Truly taken care of me. So thank you all for allowing me to share.
Maybe do you mind taking some for a few questions? I'm sure there's got to be one or two out there. Questions? Does anybody have any questions for Frank? Or do you just want to just sort of absorb it for now? Yeah, let's just absorb that. So tomorrow, we do have services at 9:30, and then afterwards, we have a lovely luncheon, and then plenty of time for more talk and Q&A and just hanging out and getting to know one another. I was a little nervous because I knew you'd be speaking for all, but I could sit and listen to you for hours. Thanks. Really, right? It's just like, wow.
I plan on doing your job soon. Not your rabbi job, but...
No. See, me, that's the rabbi's sermon was too short.
Yeah.
Said nobody ever. So that's...
True statement.
Yeah. Well, let's conclude. Have a seat. We'll... Cantor, Hanan. Elena, yeah, I'll grab that off you.
Yes. Wait.
Yeah.
Page 56. Please rise. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורל עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ. ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו רמד מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו. וידעת היום מהשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated if you wish. So we're about to offer prayers for healing. I will begin our Mishberach prayer and read the names on our master list, and then at the appropriate time, if you care to stand in your place and add the names of your loved ones, people who we are calling to mind for healing and for God's loving energy, that's most appropriate. Mishberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Yivrech v'Yirapeh et HaCholim, Aryeh Leib ben Avraham Aharon Alevi, Lee Amos, Dan Berman, Howard Bodenheimer, Harry Brockman, Herschel ben Chatzkiel V'Peshalea, Jeffrey Cooper, Michael Guryanov, Shmuel Hirsch, Janae Holbrook, Gail Kalker, Julius Katz, Eva Lockenbacher, Zahava Batlea, Mark Leibowitz, Terry Miller, Mordechai Ben Musha, Judy Osterberger, Alan Rabinowitz, Alina Sanchez, David Sanders, Rowan Schwartz, Lynn Tasto, Barbara Wasserstrom, and Sheldon Weisbach. Are there any, Hillel? I'll go this way. Mir?
Reuben and Mara Pepper, and Terrence Campbell.
Leora Gamboa, Dylan Powell, Bridget, and anyone going through any form of cancer care or anyone dealing with medical issues.
Wayne Raxford.
Melvin Shafitz. Edan Edward.
Imi Morati, Belapat Clarissima. Bavor Shnach Maplim, Bavoram, Ischazek Korshprochim, Lerachmim, Alehem, Lachlimam Rapotam, Hachzikam, Ishlach, Lehemer, Forshlema Minishamayim, Refut Nefesh, Urafut Guf, Betoch Sha'ar Chole, Olam Cham, Pilim Betocham, Shabati Milizok, Rafur, Kravo Lavo, Hashta Baralavisman Koriv, Numohar, Amehi, and Refuah Shlema to those in need of healing, wisdom and compassion to those who provide their care, and the blessings of strength and comfort to those who love them. Amen. Amen. Members of the congregation this coming week will be remembering with loving memory the following yahrzeits: Seaman Barr, Mercedes Baum, David J. Bernstein, Helena Sert, Joseph Cohen, Edie Edelstein, Michael Friedberg, Rose Kopkin, Henry Krieger, Ruth Kropfeld, Jerry Levins, Frank Scheingross, Abraham Schiff, Rachel Tracht, Dorothy Weinstock, and Max Zeman, Aleim HaShalom. Is that your grandpa?
And, your grandpa, my great-grandpa, and my friend Megan.
Are there any other yahrzeits occurring this week that I failed to mention? Those in mourning, those marking a yahrzeit, or those whose custom it is to do, We rise on page 58 for Kedishatom. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah v'yomad divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayichon u'v'yimechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata d'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. You may be seated if you wish. I was about to count the Omer, and I was thinking of the Sfirot for today's day of the Omer, and listening to Frank speak. Sometimes coincidence is just coincidence, but I think more often than not, if we're listening, coincidence is one of the ways the Holy One speaks to us, and maybe it'll connect too when I tell you about the Sfirot for today. The third week of the Omer is the week of Tiferet. Tiferet literally is splendor in Hebrew, but Kabbalistically it stands for so much more. In the layout of the Sephirah, the various aspects and emanations of the divine, and by projection, since we're in the divine image, also aspects of our makeup, it rests right below Keter, which is crown, and flanked by Chesed and Gevurah, loving kindness and strength above, and between Chokhmah and Bina, wisdom and understanding below. So Tiferet is this all-encompassing Sphira, and it contains all aspects of the world in which we live, and so it represents beauty and balance. Beauty and balance, because the thing of beauty, whether it be a sunset or a flower or a poem or love of humankind, has to combine wisdom and understanding and the luminosity of light and love and balance to exist as such. So for today, we are in Gvura of Tiferet, Gvura Shebetiferet, strength and discipline within splendor, beauty, balance. It takes discipline and it takes strength to make a choice to find beauty in all things and find balance in all things. So as we go into Gvura Shebetiferet, the bracha is on page 63, if you'd like to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. And if we turn to page 66, where are we? The second one down. Hayom shisha asar yom shehem shnei shvuot ushnei yamim la'omer. Today is the 16th day of the Omer, 2 weeks, 2 days of the Omer. We are making it ever closer to Sinai and once again receiving Torah and revelation. If you would give your kind attention. Yes, Mary. Why do we count the Omer? Because the Torah tells us to do so. No, it's... Yes, we count the Omer. That's a very good question, and you're brave to ask, because I guarantee half the people in this room were thinking, well, I should know this. And so good for you for asking. Well, we left Egypt, and our freedom, it doesn't mean anything unless we do something with it. Our gifts and our freedom and our relationships is only worth something if we use it to help other people, to think of other people, and to ensure freedom. And we do that as Jews through our relationship with God and Torah. And it took us 49 days to make it from when we got out of Egypt until we reached Sinai and entered into that loving covenant with God of our own free will. Slaves can't do that. But free people can decide, yes, I'm going to choose you, and God chose us. And so we count that each year as we renew our celebration of freedom. We count as we move and what we do with that freedom, and that freedom is dedicated to making the world better. You could talk me at Oneg, how about that? Hang on to that one for it. So, we are ever closer to Sinai. Do you have any brief but just announcements, or? All right, join us for Oneg. We have, cookies. We have a lovely Oneg. Please join us. And we will, where's Hanan? You want to leave, dealer's choice, Yigdal or Adon? Yigdal.
Page 62. יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח נמצא ואין אל מציאותו אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו אין לו דמות הגוף ואין אור גוף לא נערוך אליו קדושתו כמון לכל דבר אשר נברא ראשון ואשית לראשיתו הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר יורה גדולתו ומלכותו שפע נבואתו נתן אוהל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא ומביט את אמונתו תורת אמת נתן לעם אוהל על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו לא יחל יפאר ולא ימיר דתו לעולמים לזולתו
צופה ויודע סתרנו מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו גומר לאיש חסד כמפעלו נותן רשע רע כרשעתו ישלח לקט ימין משיחנו לפתות מחקק את ישועתו מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו. Good Shabbos!
Good Shabbos!